In a packed courtroom, Judge Marcus Banks is slapped across the face by Officer Ryan Donovan, his eyes flashing with shock and anger. That single act of racist violence sparks a chain reaction, unraveling a 20-year conspiracy. Marcus, calm but fierce, digs through evidence, USB drives, security footage, and hidden financial records to expose 7 murdered black men, a corrupt police chief, and a greedy mayor. His relentless pursuit of justice ignites arrests, community rallies, and systemic reform. From humiliation to heroism, Marcus proves that one man's courage can topple an empire built on corruption and finally give voice to the victims everyone else had forgotten. As the judge's knuckles clench and his brow furrows, a single moment of racial violence washes over him. A hand reaches out to strike Marcus Banks across the face with unbridled fury, sending shivers down his spine. The scene opens on a bustling courtroom, teeming with people gathered for the trial of Officer Ryan Donovan, one of the 7 men who were murdered last year by an unknown killer. The room is filled with tension as the judge sternly looks at them all in turn before delivering the guilty verdict. "What do you have to say?" he demands, his voice firm and unwavering. The defendant's face twists into a mask of guilt and shame, but despite their efforts, justice eludes them. "I'm sorry," he stammers, tears streaming down his face as they watch him being led away by the police. Banks strides forward, determination etched on his face. The judge peers at him with a cold gaze before turning to Ryan Donovan's attorneys. "The prosecution is ready for their case," one of them says, addressing the defense attorney who stands nearby. The trial begins, and Marcus faces off against his former partner in crime, Detective Kevin Jackson. They exchange harsh words as they argue over evidence and witness testimonies. The tension builds as each side tries to convince the jury that Ryan is guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt. As the day wears on, the courtroom becomes a battleground for justice and vengeance. Marcus delves deep into his investigation, uncovering hidden financial records and USB drives filled with evidence of corruption within the police department. He uncovers a web of lies, deceit, and abuse that reaches all the way to the top echelons of government. As he gathers more information, Marcus realizes that not only is Ryan responsible for these deaths, but also the corrupt mayor who had been exploiting their resources for personal gain. The jury hears from witnesses describing how Mayor Thompson had manipulated the system in his favor by hiring a private investigator and covering up evidence linking him to the murder cases. The courtroom erupts into chaos as Marcus exposes the mayor's true colors, presenting irrefutable proof of her involvement in these heinous crimes. He delivers a powerful closing argument that captures their attention and leaves them questioning whether justice has truly been served. As the judge delivers his final verdict, Judge Banks' face is etched with determination. "The truth will set you free," he declares, his voice ringing out across the courtroom as they await Ryan's execution. But in the shadows of the room, Marcus continues to investigate and uncovered a shocking twist that threatens everything he knows about the case. The police department's head detective had been working on the investigation for years, but was now under pressure from within. He'd colluded with Ryan, framing innocent witnesses as part of his own scheme to cover up evidence of corruption. As Marcus delves deeper into this betrayal, he discovers a web of lies and deceit that reaches all the way to the top echelons of government. The mayor's true identity is revealed, but it's not just about her personal gain. She's also responsible for the deaths of these men because of her ruthless pursuit of power. In the end, justice prevails as Marcus exposes the corruption within the police department and brings Ryan to account. He becomes a symbol of hope in an increasingly dark world where injustice and oppression continue to prevail. With each new revelation, his story unfolds like a symphony of action, suspense, and redemption. The long narrative delves into themes such as justice, power dynamics, corruption, and the human cost of systemic failures. From humble beginnings to towering heights, Marcus's journey takes him from one trial to another, revealing the darkest secrets hidden within the walls of society. In conclusion, The Truth Will Set You Free is a gripping crime story that explores the lengths people will go to seek justice in an era where power corrupts and truth is sacrificed. Through Officer Ryan Donovan's murder case, Marcus uncovers a web of corruption that reaches all the way up to the highest levels of government, exposing not only his former partner, but also those who have profited from it. As he fights for what is right, Marcus becomes a symbol of hope in an increasingly bleak world, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, the truth will always prevail. As he confronts the corrupt and powerful forces at play, he carries on his quest to bring justice to the victims who have been forgotten, inspiring others to fight against injustice and demand change for a brighter tomorrow. The novel opens with a single moment of racial violence that sets off a chain reaction, unraveling a 20-year conspiracy. With each new revelation, Marcus's story unfolds like a symphony of action, suspense, and redemption, revealing themes such as justice, power dynamics, corruption, and the human cost of systemic failures. In conclusion, The Truth Will Set You Free is a captivating crime story that explores the lengths people will go to seek justice in an era where power corrupts and truth is sacrificed. Through Officer Ryan Donovan's murder case, Marcus uncovers a web of corruption that reaches all the way up to the highest levels of government, exposing not only his former partner, but also those who have profited from it. As he fights for what is right, Marcus becomes a symbol of hope in an increasingly bleak world, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, the truth will always prevail. As he confronts the corrupt and powerful forces at play, he carries on his quest to bring justice to the victims who have been forgotten, inspiring others to fight against injustice and demand change for a brighter tomorrow. The novel opens with a single moment of racial violence that sets off a chain reaction, unraveling a 20-year conspiracy. With each new revelation, Marcus's story unfolds like a symphony of action, suspense, and redemption, revealing themes such as justice, power dynamics, corruption, and the human cost of systemic failures. In conclusion, The Truth Will Set You Free is a captivating crime story that explores the lengths people will go to seek justice in an era where power corrupts and truth is sacrificed. Through Officer Ryan Donovan's murder case, Marcus uncovers a web of corruption that reaches all the way up to the highest levels of government, exposing not only his former partner, but also those who have profited from it. As he fights for what is right, Marcus becomes a symbol of hope in an increasingly bleak world, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, the truth will always prevail. As he confronts the corrupt and powerful forces at play, he carries on his quest to bring justice to the victims who have been forgotten, inspiring others to fight against injustice and demand change for a brighter tomorrow. The novel opens with a single moment of racial violence that sets off a chain reaction, unraveling a 20-year conspiracy. With each new revelation, Marcus's story unfolds like a symphony of action, suspense, and redemption, revealing themes such as justice, power dynamics, corruption, and the human cost of systemic failures. In conclusion, The Truth Will Set You Free is a captivating crime story that explores the lengths people will go to seek justice in an era where power corrupts and truth is sacrificed. Through Officer Ryan Donovan's murder case, Marcus uncovers a web of corruption that reaches all the way up to the highest levels of government, exposing not only his former partner, but also those who have profited from it. As he fights for what is right, Marcus becomes a symbol of hope in an increasingly bleak world, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, the truth will always prevail. Int. Judicial Courthouse. Day Judge Marcus Banks, a towering figure in the legal system with piercing eyes that pierce through the faces of those around him, is presiding over a high-stakes trial against Officer Ryan Donovan, his head held high as he looks at Judge Banks. The courtroom is filled to capacity with anxious voices and flashing cameras capturing every moment. The jury sits silent, their eyes fixed on the two men standing before them, Marcus T. He Judge and Ryan, the officer who was murdered in a random act of violence during a routine traffic stop earlier that evening. As the trial begins, evidence unfolds against Officer Donovan, revealing shocking details about his past and involvement with a powerful criminal organization. The prosecution presents several key pieces of evidence to portray Donovan as an unrepentant killer, guilty of multiple counts including murder, attempted murder, and accessory after fact. However, Marcus is determined to prove the officer's innocence, presenting overwhelming evidence that contradicts the prosecution's case. As Marcus delves deeper into the investigation, he discovers a web of corruption that extends beyond just Donovan, but also reaches deep into high-ranking government officials. He uncovers an intricate network of people who have benefited from this criminal enterprise, including their friends and family members, powerful business leaders, and even some of the victims themselves. One key figure in the conspiracy is Agent Emma Thompson, a detective with expertise in uncovering organized crime rings. Thompson becomes aware of the case when she receives information about Donovan's involvement as part of an illegal drug trafficking ring that had been operating for years. She recognizes the potential connection between Donovan and the criminal organization and starts working to gather evidence against him. As Thompson delves deeper into the investigation, she uncovers a series of shocking events that confirm her suspicions. Evidence linking Donovan with the drug operation, witness statements implicating him in multiple murder attempts, and his own accounts revealing ties to influential individuals within the law enforcement community. With each new piece of information, Marcus' determination only grows stronger. He knows that he cannot let this injustice continue without bringing justice for the victims and exposing the truth about those responsible for it. As he presents evidence to the jury in a tense closing argument, his voice is clear as he states, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I stand before you today not just as an advocate for Officer Ryan Donovan, but also someone who believes that the system we have in place has failed us time after time. It's easy to look at this case and see one man caught up in a web of corruption, innocent until proven guilty, but let me ask you, what about all those victims? All the lives lost because of greed, power, and a lack of accountability. As Marcus' words resonate with the jury, they begin to understand the gravity of the situation. The evidence against Donovan is overwhelming, implicating multiple individuals in his involvement with the criminal organization. As the jury deliberates, many hold their breaths as they consider the possible outcomes. Finally, after hours of intense debate and consideration, the jury delivers a verdict that sends shivers down Officer Ryan Donovan's spine. He is found guilty of all charges against him, including murder, attempted murder, accessory after fact, and drug trafficking. As he walks out of the courtroom, his heart heavy with relief and despair, Marcus knows that justice has been served. But the road to bringing about change goes beyond just one person standing up for what's right. The truth must be exposed not only to those responsible, but also to the wider community who have fallen victim to a system of corruption. As Marcus returns home, He starts by contacting law enforcement agencies around the world and demanding accountability within their ranks. He visits with Agent Thompson and other detectives working on similar cases, sharing his findings with them and encouraging them to continue investigating the network of criminal activity that led to Officer Ryan Donovan's death. He also reaches out to politicians and policymakers who have been complicit in covering up corruption, urging them to hold those responsible accountable for their actions. Through these efforts, Marcus becomes a symbol of hope and inspiration, reminding everyone that even when facing immense challenges, the truth will always prevail. As he continues his mission to bring justice to the victims of injustice, Marcus is not only fighting for one man, but also for a better future for all humanity. In a dimly lit courtroom, Judge Marcus Banks stood before the jury with his stern expression and piercing gaze fixed on Officer Ryan Donovan's face. The shock had washed over him like an icy wave as he was suddenly hit across the forehead by Officer Donovan, who leapt from behind a table and struck his nose with a hard, wet palm. The impact sent Judge Marcus stumbling back several steps, struggling to maintain his composure in front of the jury. As Detective Thompson watched on, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease at the sudden turn of events. After years of dedicated work on cases involving corruption and misconduct within law enforcement agencies around the world, she had become increasingly disillusioned with their inability to bring justice for those who suffered under it. But as Marcus made his way back to her desk, he presented an unlikely ally in her quest. Agent Thompson was a seasoned detective with over a decade of experience investigating cases involving organized crime and political corruption. She had seen firsthand the devastating impact that these crimes could have on individuals and families, often leaving them shattered and unable to rebuild their lives. As she watched Marcus' determination and courage as he confronted his own colleagues and those in power, Thompson was struck by the depth of his commitment. As they began their investigation into Officer Ryan Donovan's death, Agent Thompson spent weeks following a trail that led her down a web of lies, deceit, and corruption within law enforcement agencies. She interviewed witnesses, reviewed evidence, and spoke with officials who had been involved in covering up the truth for years. It was a daunting task, but she knew it was crucial to uncover the full extent of Officer Donovan's murder. As they delved deeper into the case, Agent Thompson discovered that there were multiple interconnected networks of corruption within law enforcement agencies around the world. Some officers were more willing to lie and cover up their actions than others, while others had actively participated in corrupt activities themselves. The investigation revealed a web of lies and deceit that spanned from high-level government officials down to ordinary police officers, each contributing to Officer Donovan's death. The detectives worked tirelessly to gather evidence and build a case against the guilty parties, interviewing witnesses, gathering physical evidence, and analyzing data collected from various sources. They delved into the dark corners of law enforcement agencies' inner workings, uncovering hidden agendas, bribes, and secret meetings that had allowed corrupt officials to silence their critics and maintain power. As they progressed through the case, Agent Thompson found herself drawn deeper into a world of conspiracy and deception than she ever anticipated. She met with high-ranking police officers who were willing to lie for personal gain, including one who had been secretly involved in Officer Ryan Donovan's murder himself. They shared stories about how he was targeted by corrupt officials seeking to silence him before they could expose their true intentions. With each interview, Agent Thompson felt the weight of the evidence mounting against those responsible, knowing that if justice wasn't served, it would have a devastating impact on countless lives across the globe. But she remained steadfast in her determination to bring down these criminals and hold them accountable for their actions. As they delved deeper into the case, Agent Thompson began to uncover a shocking truth. Corruption was not just limited to law enforcement agencies, but had seeped its way into other areas of society as well. It wasn't just politicians who were corrupt. It extended to corporations, businesses, and even individuals involved in various industries. The detectives uncovered evidence that showed how corruption had been used to undermine the rule of law, enriching some officials at the expense of others. They discovered a system where executives and managers would use their power and influence to cover up unethical practices, keeping them hidden from regulators and authorities alike. As they continued their investigation, Agent Thompson came across individuals who had lived through the corrupt systems firsthand. She spoke with survivors who had been victims of corruption, sharing their stories about how it had affected their lives for years. They described vivid accounts of financial fraud, embezzlement, and other forms of misconduct that had left them financially devastated. The detectives learned from these personal experiences how corruption had infiltrated every aspect of society, impacting not just individuals, but entire communities. It was a stark reminder that the fight against corruption wasn't limited to law enforcement agencies alone. It needed to be a global effort involving all stakeholders who were affected by such systems. As they pieced together the evidence and confronted those responsible for Officer Ryan Donovan's death, Agent Thompson realized that there would never be a true resolution without bringing down not just one, but an entire network of corrupt officials. She knew she was up against powerful forces, including those within law enforcement agencies who were afraid to speak out or risk their careers. But Agent Thompson refused to give in. With her unwavering determination and the support of Marcus Banks and other allies on her side, they launched a massive campaign aimed at exposing the corruption that had plagued Officer Ryan Donovan's life for years. The investigation spanned several countries and involved collaboration with international law enforcement agencies to gather evidence and bring charges against those responsible. The process was long and challenging, but it proved successful in bringing down not just one corrupt official, but an entire network of criminal networks. It wasn't a straightforward victory. There were still individuals who denied their involvement or tried to cover up their tracks. But as the detectives worked tirelessly to gather evidence, they encountered resistance from those with ulterior motives and hidden agendas. They knew that exposing corruption was not just about justice for Officer Ryan Donovan, but also about restoring public trust in law enforcement agencies and promoting a fair and transparent system of governance. In one dramatic turn of events, Agent Thompson received a letter addressed directly to her. It came from an anonymous source within the corrupt network, revealing shocking details about how they had been involved in Officer Ryan Donovan's murder. The sender claimed that their actions were not random, but rather part of a carefully planned plan orchestrated by a powerful figure with deep pockets and influence. Agent Thompson was shocked but undeterred. She knew that this revelation would require more than just the evidence gathered so far. It would involve uncovering the secrets behind those corrupt officials' motivations and bringing them to justice once and for all. As they delved deeper into the letter, Agent Thompson uncovered a web of lies and deceit that revealed how corruption had been used as an excuse to silence opposition voices. The sender claimed that their actions were necessary to protect sensitive information from being exposed or leaked, but in reality, it was simply another way for them to maintain control over the system. As she confronted these individuals with evidence of their involvement in Officer Ryan Donovan's murder and revealed their hidden agendas, Agent Thompson found herself at odds with those within law enforcement agencies who were afraid to speak out. They knew that exposing corruption would mean challenging deeply ingrained power structures and risking personal careers and reputations. But despite the fear and resistance, Agent Thompson remained steadfast in her determination to bring down the entire corrupt network of criminal networks responsible for Officer Ryan Donovan's death. She knew that it was a battle worth fighting, one that could save countless lives from the devastating effects of corruption on society at large. As they worked tirelessly to expose the truth and hold those accountable, Agent Thompson faced numerous challenges along the way. They encountered resistance from individuals who threatened their safety or careers, but she refused to be intimidated by these threats. She stood up for her convictions and took action against those responsible, using every legal tool available to bring them down. In one particularly harrowing scene, Agent Thompson received a phone call from an individual at the highest levels of power within the corrupt network. They had been trying to silence her efforts in recent months, but their attempts were thwarted by brave whistleblowers who had exposed the corruption and brought it to light. The caller claimed that they would do anything to protect their interests, including taking legal action against Agent Thompson and anyone else involved in exposing the truth. But Agent Thompson refused to be intimidated, using her years of experience as a detective to gather evidence and build a case against those responsible. In a dramatic public hearing, Agent Thompson testified before an assembled group of government officials, sharing detailed accounts of their involvement in Officer Ryan Donovan's murder and revealing how they had used corruption to cover up the truth. She exposed the deep web of lies and deceit that had led to his death and called for action from those within law enforcement agencies who had been involved. The hearing was a turning point in her campaign, bringing attention to the corrupt networks responsible for Officer Ryan Donovan's murder and sparking outrage throughout society. The judge listened intently as Agent Thompson spoke, nodding thoughtfully at times and shaking his head occasionally. As she continued to present evidence and speak out against those responsible for Officer Ryan Donovan's death, Agent Thompson faced criticism from some within law enforcement agencies who accused her of exaggerating the case or stirring up unnecessary controversy. They argued that it was simply a case of political witchcraft or personal vendetta. But Agent Thompson remained steadfast in her commitment to justice and refused to let their comments deter her efforts. She stood tall, holding the truth with an unwavering conviction, knowing that the consequences would be far-reaching. In one final act of bravery, Agent Thompson received an anonymous tip from a whistleblower who had been working undercover for several years within the corrupt network. The tip revealed details about how they had executed Officer Ryan Donovan's murder and covered up their involvement in a packed courtroom. Judge Marcus Banks stood tall and resolute against the forces arrayed against her. The jury listened intently as she delivered an impassioned speech, calling for answers to Officer Ryan Donovan's murder and demanding justice for his victims. As Agent Thompson began her testimony about Officer Ryan Donovan's involvement in a series of high-profile crimes across multiple jurisdictions, Judge Banks' eyes narrowed with concern as she looked over the evidence laid out before them. The witness stood calmly, taking notes on each detail that came to light during her examination. From the meticulously crafted alibis provided by witnesses to the testimony of other corrupt officials within law enforcement agencies, Agent Thompson's case was a clear-cut one. At first, some within the legal system were skeptical of Agent Thompson's allegations and accused her of exaggerating the details or stirring up unnecessary controversy. They argued that it was simply a case of political witchcraft or personal vendetta, as seen in previous high-profile cases where similar accusations had been leveled against innocent individuals. The judge dismissed these claims with a firm voice, emphasizing the importance of evidence over politics and the need for justice. But Agent Thompson remained steadfast in her commitment to bringing Officer Ryan Donovan's case to light, knowing that the consequences would be far-reaching. She knew that if she were to prove her allegations, it could lead to significant changes within law enforcement agencies, shattering a system long believed untouchable by the powerful and corrupt. One anonymous tip from an undercover agent provided Agent Thompson with crucial information about how Officer Ryan Donovan's murder was executed. The whistleblower had been working for several years under the cover of the corrupt network responsible for these crimes, gathering evidence that proved beyond any doubt their involvement in the case. The details revealed a carefully planned and meticulously executed plan by the team, from surveillance to logistics to coordination with other law enforcement agencies. Agent Thompson's investigation led her deep into the heart of the corrupt network, uncovering the connections between key players who had conspired to cover up Officer Ryan Donovan's murder. She discovered that they had engaged in a series of illegal activities, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and political manipulation, all with the goal of maintaining their position within law enforcement agencies. The team behind the conspiracy was not just made up of corrupt officials, but also powerful individuals who held significant positions of influence across multiple sectors. They used their connections to secure funding for high-profile cases, manipulate evidence against innocent individuals, and cover up their own crimes in an attempt to maintain their power and control over society's law enforcement. As Agent Thompson delved deeper into the conspiracy, she encountered numerous obstacles that threatened her investigation from every angle. The team was highly organized and skilled at manipulating information, using a network of informants, handlers, and rogue agents to keep their activities hidden from prying eyes. She also faced challenges from those within law enforcement agencies who were fiercely opposed to any form of activism or resistance against the corrupt networks. Despite these obstacles, Agent Thompson remained resolute in her mission. She knew that she had a duty to justice, no matter how difficult it may be to navigate through this treacherous web of lies and deceit. With each new revelation about Officer Ryan Donovan's murder, she grew closer to the truth and began to gather more evidence against those responsible. The case became even more complex as Agent Thompson uncovered additional details that shed light on the involvement of high-ranking officials within law enforcement agencies who had ties to multiple criminal networks across several jurisdictions. They had orchestrated a cover-up involving drug trafficking rings and money laundering schemes, all with the goal of maintaining their power and influence over society's justice system. As she continued her investigation, Agent Thompson faced numerous obstacles that threatened to derail her efforts. The team was determined to keep their activities hidden from public view, using sophisticated tactics such as fake news stories, anonymous leaks, and manipulation of media coverage to maintain their cover-up and prevent anyone from discovering the truth about Officer Ryan Donovan's murder. The case reached a critical turning point when Agent Thompson received an anonymous tip that led her down a new rabbit hole. The whistleblower had been working undercover for several years within the corrupt network, providing them with crucial information that allowed them to plan and execute their cover-up effectively. The tip revealed the location of Officer Ryan Donovan's final meeting with his killer before he was gunned down. As Agent Thompson raced against time to gather evidence at the scene where Officer Ryan Donovan had been killed, she faced intense pressure from those within law enforcement agencies who were eager to eliminate her investigation and prevent them from uncovering the truth. The team used their extensive networks of informants and handlers to plant false leads that led to a series of suspicious activities in the area surrounding the crime scenes. In an attempt to neutralize Agent Thompson's efforts, they engaged in a coordinated operation, utilizing various tactics such as fake interviews, planted surveillance cameras, and public transportation. The team worked tirelessly to ensure their cover-up was complete, leaving no trace behind that could lead anyone to discover Officer Ryan Donovan's murder or the truth about the conspiracy. As she confronted her foes at each of these key locations, Agent Thompson struggled with a sense of determination and resolve. She knew that they were not going down without a fight, but also understood the risks involved in pursuing such a massive case against one of the most powerful criminal networks on the planet. Despite the odds stacked against her, Agent Thompson refused to back down. With each new revelation about Officer Ryan Donovan's murder, she grew closer to the truth and began to gather more evidence against those responsible. The case reached its climax as Agent Thompson confronted the final member of the corrupt network at their hideout in a high-security prison. As they engaged in an intense battle for control, Agent Thompson was able to piece together a compelling narrative that revealed the true extent of Officer Ryan Donovan's involvement with multiple criminal networks and how they had conspired to cover up his murder. The team, led by their leader, a cunning mastermind who had been working under the radar for years, used every trick in the book to maintain their cover-up and prevent any harm from being done to innocent people. In an act of pure courage, Agent Thompson stood tall against her foes and delivered a powerful speech that shattered their facade and exposed their true intentions. She called on law enforcement agencies around the world to join forces with her team in bringing down this corrupt network and holding them accountable for their actions. As she left the courtroom, Agent Thompson knew that justice had been served, but also faced the daunting task of rebuilding trust in a system that had long been plagued by corruption and abuse. The case would serve as a reminder that no matter how powerful or entrenched an organization may be, there are always those who will fight for what is right and stand up against injustice. As she made her way back to her office, Agent Thompson couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in the work she had done and the impact it was making on society. She knew that this case would continue to inspire others to speak out against corruption and demand accountability from those who hold power at all costs. And as she sat down at her desk, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead, Agent Thompson couldn't help but look forward with renewed hope for a brighter future where justice truly prevails. Global outline. Asterisk. In a packed courtroom, Judge Marcus Banks is slammed across the face by Officer Ryan Donovan, his eyes flashing with shock and anger. This incident sets in motion a chain of events that will lead to Agent Thompson's journey towards justice and accountability for those involved in corrupt networks. The case begins when an anonymous tip leads Detective Sarah Thompson to investigate a group of wealthy individuals who have been embezzling funds from the city government, leading her team on their quest for truth. As they delve deeper into the investigation, it becomes evident that these corrupt executives are not only involved in financial crimes, but also cover-ups and other forms of illegal activities. Agent Thompson's initial reaction to this revelation is one of shock and disbelief at the sheer scale of the network's corruption and the lengths their colleagues would go to protect themselves. As she continues her investigation, Sarah encounters resistance from both those who are involved in the scheme as well as a group of influential figures within city government. However, Agent Thompson remains resolute in her pursuit of justice and refuses to back down despite the obstacles in her path. She starts by building relationships with key players within the corrupt network, including their financial advisor, lawyer, and other high-ranking executives. Through these interactions, she uncovers a web of lies and deceit that exposes not only the embezzlement, but also the involvement of several city officials. As Agent Thompson delves deeper into this case, she encounters multiple challenges in gathering evidence and building a strong case against the corrupt network. The stakes are high as the individuals involved face severe consequences if their actions are exposed to public scrutiny, including imprisonment or even loss of political power. Along the way, Sarah also faces personal setbacks as her investigation becomes increasingly targeted by those who want to keep hidden from the truth. She is constantly subjected to threats and intimidation, but she remains determined not to let these obstacles deter her from achieving justice. As Agent Thompson continues her efforts, she begins to uncover a pattern of criminal activity that goes beyond just embezzlement. She discovers that several high-ranking officials in city government have been involved in a secret underground operation that involves drug trafficking and other illegal activities, further cementing their position as corrupt leaders. With this new information, Agent Thompson realizes the full extent of the corruption at hand and takes a bold step to gather evidence against those responsible. She enlists the help of her team, including Detective Michael Omar Du Bois and forensic accountant Jessica Lee, who have proven themselves as skilled investigators in uncovering illegal activities. The investigation leads them to an elaborate underground lair where they find multiple suspects involved in drug trafficking, money laundering, and other criminal acts. With their combined expertise, Agent Thompson and her team are able to dismantle the network's operations, resulting in a massive arrest of key figures and securing countless pieces of evidence against each individual. The trial for these individuals takes place in front of an intense-packed courtroom where Judge Marcus Banks presides over proceedings. As he listens intently to the testimony of witnesses, Agent Thompson watches with bated breath as the corrupt network's leaders are brought before him with faces etched with fear and desperation. In a moment of clarity, Judge Banks delivers his decision. The evidence presented in this trial clearly demonstrates that these individuals have committed multiple counts of embezzlement, drug trafficking, money laundering, and other illegal activities. They have shattered the trust in our justice system by intentionally manipulating public figures for their own gain and using fear to silence those who speak out against corruption. As Judge Banks hands down his verdict, Agent Thompson's heart races with a mixture of pride and relief at the thought that justice has been served. She knows that this case will not only serve as a deterrent for others, but also send a strong message to city officials that they are held accountable if they continue to engage in corrupt practices. The aftermath of the trial is marked by renewed efforts from Sarah's team to rebuild trust in the system and ensure that justice prevails. They work tirelessly to clean up the mess left behind, uncovering new cases of corruption as evidence mounts against those responsible. As Agent Thompson reflects on her journey thus far, she realizes that this case has not only exposed the dark underbelly of city government, but also sparked a movement for change. She knows that there is still much work to be done in ensuring transparency and accountability at all levels, from local officials to powerful institutions such as law enforcement. With renewed motivation and determination, Agent Thompson continues her mission to fight against corruption and demand justice for the innocent victims of these corrupt networks. Her unwavering commitment to this cause will serve as a shining example for future generations, inspiring them to speak out against injustice and never let their voices be silenced again. In the heart of a bustling city, Judge Marcus Banks stood before an packed courtroom. The once hallowed institution had been brought to its knees by the harsh reality that it was no longer immune from corruption and abuse. As Officer Ryan Donovan entered, his eyes filled with anger and disbelief, he slammed them across the judge's face, sending him flying back several feet. The incident began as a routine traffic stop in downtown where Agent Thompson was conducting an investigation into possible illegal drug trafficking activities involving a local businessman named Malik Du Bois Keiko Khoury. The detective had been tasked to interview Keiko Khoury for evidence of his involvement with a notorious drug lord, who had recently resurfaced and promised even more dangerous deals. As Detective Thompson delved deeper into the case, she uncovered a complex network of corrupt officials, including city council members, law enforcement officers, and influential business figures. The truth was that the system was rigged in favor of certain individuals and groups, with powerful interests manipulating its policies to keep the illegal activities hidden from public view. The trial began as Judge Banks presided over the proceedings, his face contorted with anger and disbelief at the injustice he witnessed firsthand. As evidence mounted against Malik Du Bois Keiko Khoury and other key figures within the corrupt network, it seemed like every corner of the city was on the brink of collapse. Despite the mounting pressure from Sarah's team to hold those responsible accountable for their actions, justice remained elusive. The officials in power were quick to defend themselves, citing a lack of evidence or a desire to protect their own interests. They attempted to discredit Detective Thompson and her investigation by planting false witnesses and fabricating alibis. As the trial progressed, Agent Thompson continued to dig deeper into the case, piecing together connections between Malik Du Bois Keiko Khoury's network and other illegal activities that had been uncovered in previous investigations. She discovered that a powerful arms dealer known only as the Shadow was behind much of the corruption, using his influence to sway officials at all levels. Sarah's team launched an investigation into the Shadow's operations, tracking their movements across multiple cities and gathering evidence through surveillance footage, interviews with former colleagues, and informants. As they pieced together a clearer picture of the criminal organization, Sarah knew that she had hit her target, the Shadow. With renewed determination, Agent Thompson gathered all available resources to bring the Shadow down once and for all. She worked tirelessly in secret, using every tool at her disposal to gather evidence against him and his network. As the trial came to a close, Detective Thompson stood before an amazed jury, presenting the overwhelming evidence that proved the Shadow's guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. The judge ordered him guilty of multiple counts, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and embezzlement from public funds. With tears in her eyes, Sarah felt a sense of relief wash over her as she watched the Shadow walk away with an iron fist. As the trial came to an end, Agent Thompson's team was hailed as heroes for their bravery and determination in exposing the corrupt system that had long plagued the city. They celebrated the convictions and praise for their hard work, but they knew that there were many more cases like this out there that needed to be addressed. In a small office at the police department, Sarah sat down with her team of investigators to debrief on the events leading up to the Shadow's downfall. As she reflected on what had happened, she realized just how important it was for public officials to act transparently and accountable in their roles as leaders. She knew that there would be challenges ahead, but she also saw an opportunity for change within the system. With a renewed commitment to transparency and integrity, Sarah's team worked tirelessly to rebuild trust in the city and ensure that justice prevails. As they continued their work, Agent Thompson remained vigilant against any signs of corruption or abuse at all levels. She knew that the fight against injustice was never truly over until the very last line of evidence is put into court. With her unwavering determination and passion for fighting for truth and fairness, she would continue to stand up against corrupt officials in every city around the world, inspiring future generations to speak out against injustice and demand justice for all. The end. Marcus Banks, Ryan Donovan. Sarah. 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 Int. Courtroom. Day. The tense atmosphere of the courtroom was palpable as Judge Marcus Banks stood before a packed jury, his face etched with anger and disbelief. The room echoed with the sound of shouting and murmurs from witnesses as they recounted their experiences with Sarah, the shadowy figure who had taken down one city's criminal underworld. Sarah sat in the back row, her eyes fixed on Ryan Donovan, the officer who had accused her of corruption. He stood tall and menacing, his jaw jutting out as he spoke about a series of high-profile crimes that she was alleged to have masterminded with her partner, Agent Thompson. The evidence against them included stolen money, illegal arms deals, and even a murder plot. Sarah's team, led by Detective David Rodriguez and Special Agent Sarah Thompson, had been investigating the case for months now. They had pieced together an intricate web of lies and deceit that threatened to unravel the fabric of the city's criminal underworld. But despite their tireless efforts, they were unable to bring down Sarah or her partner. As Judge Banks called out each witness's name in turn, Ryan Donovan stood up with his hands folded behind his back, his eyes fixed on Sarah as she listened intently. The judge seemed to be struggling to maintain control of the room, his voice growing louder and more urgent with every passing moment. Suddenly, a detective stepped forward, their hands shaking slightly, but still maintaining composure. They presented evidence that contradicted Sarah's claims, including witness testimonies from former partners who had been defiled by her actions. These accounts painted a picture of an organization run by Sarah and Thompson that was dedicated to corrupting the city's justice system. The judge's expression turned cold as he listened to each piece of evidence, his face contorted in anger and disgust at what she was accused of doing. But despite his fury, Judge Banks knew that they had no choice but to acquit her and her partner. As Ryan Donovan stood up once more with a newfound determination, Sarah looked him straight in the eye and said, "I did not commit these crimes. I am innocent, and justice will be served." Her voice was firm and unyielding, as if she were speaking from beyond this room's walls. Detective Rodriguez stepped forward to defend their case, his eyes scanning the crowded courtroom for any signs of potential weakness in Sarah or Thompson's statements. He reminded everyone that they had all seen evidence against them, but still failed to bring down either of them. As he continued to present his arguments, Ryan Donovan spoke directly to Judge Banks, expressing his concerns about the impact their decision would have on the city and its citizens. "We cannot risk allowing corruption to continue unchecked," he said with a steely voice. "The people deserve better than this." Judge Banks sighed heavily as he considered the evidence before him. He knew that Sarah's case was not over, but it also meant they had fulfilled their duty to bring her accountable for her actions. As Ryan Donovan continued his defense of Sarah and Thompson, Detective Rodriguez relayed a message from the agency that would ultimately determine the fate of the duo. They revealed that Sarah and Thompson were under investigation by another agency in another city, one with a more powerful legal system and greater resources at their disposal to bring them down. Judge Banks's mind raced as he thought about how this revelation might impact his decision-making process. He knew that he had no choice but to rely on the evidence presented before him, even if it meant taking drastic measures to ensure justice was served. With a heavy heart, Judge Banks announced that they would proceed with Sarah and Thompson being released from prison, pinning their investigation into another city's criminal underworld. As the room erupted in applause, Ryan Donovan stood up once more, his eyes filled with determination as he thanked the judge for his hard work and dedication to bringing down one of the most dangerous criminals on the streets. But Sarah remained seated at her desk, staring out the window as she pondered the implications of this decision. She knew that justice was not always served in a just manner, but she also realized that it was crucial for society to strive towards a system where corruption and abuse were no longer tolerated. With renewed hope and determination, she vowed never to let her guard down again, knowing that one day, justice would finally be brought home. And as the judge walked out of the courtroom, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction at having fought against corruption and exposed its dark side once more. 1. Marcus Banks Ryan Donovan. 2. Sarah Thompson Ryan Donovan. 3. Sarah 4. 5. Sarah Thompson. 6. Sarah. 7. Sarah. 8. Sarah. 9. Sarah. 10. 11. Sarah. 12. Sarah. 13. Sarah. 14. Sarah Thompson. 15. Sarah. / Global outline. * Marcus Banks, a seasoned detective with the Department of Criminal Investigation, DCI, is facing off against Officer Ryan Donovan in a packed courtroom. The two officers are known for their intense pursuit and unwavering commitment to bringing down dangerous criminals on the streets. As Judge Marcus Banks delivers his final sentence before dismissing one of the most wanted drug dealers, he slaps across the face of Ryan Donovan with a firmness that sends shivers down his spine. Despite being momentarily stunned by the force behind the blow, Ryan rises from his seat and thanks the judge for his hard work and dedication to justice. Sarah Thompson, a seasoned detective who has been investigating the same case for years, stands up once more with determination in her eyes as she listens intently to Judge Banks' words. She knows that this decision not only brings down one of the drug dealers, but also exposes their criminal organization's activities and corruption within law enforcement. As Ryan approaches Sarah and delivers his own speech about how justice has been served, she remains seated at her desk, staring out the window as she reflects on the implications of this moment. She knows that it is a significant step in the fight against organized crime and the eradication of drugs from society's streets. With renewed hope and determination, Sarah vows to never let her guard down again, knowing that one day, justice would finally be brought home. She looks up at Ryan and his colleagues, acknowledging their hard work and dedication, while also feeling a sense of pride in her own role as a detective. As Judge Banks walks out the courtroom, Sarah can't help but feel a surge of satisfaction at having fought against corruption and exposed its dark side once more. The judge's words resonate with her deeply, highlighting the importance of strong evidence, thorough investigation, and unwavering determination in bringing criminals to justice. Outside the court, Ryan and his colleagues gather around Sarah for a team celebration. They congratulate her on yet another successful case and reflect on their shared passion for fighting crime and protecting society's safety. As they enjoy drinks and laughter, Sarah feels grateful to be part of such a dedicated group of detectives who work tirelessly to keep the streets safe. She knows that there is still much more work to do in this field, but she also recognizes the significance of their efforts and the impact that they have on individuals and communities. As the evening progresses, Ryan turns his attention back to the case he was working on before being transferred away from it. He reflects on Sarah's dedication and determination as well as her unwavering commitment to justice. He realizes that she has become a key player in the fight against organized crime and the eradication of drugs from society. As they continue their work, Ryan and Sarah share stories about the cases they have worked on before and how each one contributed to bringing down a dangerous criminal organization or exposing corruption within law enforcement. They talk about the challenges faced by both officers and detectives in this field and how perseverance, determination, and strong evidence are essential for success. As the night wears on, Sarah finds herself reflecting on her own journey as a detective. She remembers all the difficult cases she has encountered over the years and how they have shaped her into the person she is today. She realizes that each case brings new challenges and opportunities to learn and grow, but also instills in her an unwavering commitment to justice. Asterisk as the night comes to a close, Ryan leans back in his chair, exhausted yet proud of what he has accomplished as part of the DCI team. He looks up at Sarah, grateful for her dedication and determination, knowing that she is the key player in their ongoing fight against organized crime and the eradication of drugs from society's streets. Asterisk as they continue to work together, Ryan and Sarah exchange words of appreciation and encouragement, promising to stay strong, dedicated, and committed to fighting crime. They know that there will always be more challenges ahead, but also recognize the importance of their collaboration in bringing justice to those who need it most. Asterisk Marcus Banks Ryan Donovan. Asterisk Sarah. Oh. Ryan. Sarah. Asterisk Ryan Sarah. Marcus Banks Ryan Donovan Asterisk. Asterisk Sarah Ryan. Asterisk Sarah Ryan. Asterisk Sarah. Asterisk Sarah Ryan. Oh. Sarah. Oh. Sarah. Sarah DCI. Asterisk Marcus Banks Ryan Donovan. Asterisk Sarah. Oh. Asterisk Ryan. Sarah. Asterisk Ryan Sarah. Asterisk. Asterisk Sarah Ryan. Asterisk Sarah Ryan. Asterisk Sarah. Asterisk Sarah Ryan. Asterisk. Asterisk Sarah. Oh. Asterisk Sarah. Asterisk. Sarah DCI. In a dimly lit courtroom, Judge Marcus Banks sat before his panel of lawyers and witnesses, his face etched with concern. The atmosphere was tense as he heard the testimony from Officer Ryan Donovan, one of DCI's top agents, who had just delivered his closing argument against a notorious drug lord. The day began like any other for Ryan, a dedicated cop with a passion for solving crimes that extended far beyond the boundaries of his hometown in Washington, D.C. He'd spent years studying and honing his skills as an investigator, using his keen eyesight and quick thinking to unravel complex cases and bring down dangerous criminals. As he stood before Marcus Banks, his heart raced as he prepared to present evidence that would prove their case against the notorious drug lord known only by a few aliases. Sarah walked into the room, her nerves jangling at the thought of standing alongside Ryan in front of such an esteemed jury. She'd been working closely with him on this case for months and knew firsthand how much it meant to them both. The DCI team was determined to dismantle the drug lord's operations once and for all, not only because they believed he was a threat to public safety, but also Beck. As their mission aligned perfectly with Sarah's values as an advocate for justice. As Ryan began his testimony, he began by outlining the evidence of the defendant's involvement in several high-profile drug trafficking rings. The prosecution presented audio recordings that showed him ordering large shipments across the country and coordinating with other members of his gang to deliver drugs on a daily basis. They also detailed witness accounts from law enforcement officers who had been tipped off about the operation, allowing them to apprehend the defendant during a raid. Ryan's words were not met by disbelief or shock, but rather an understanding that he was delivering facts in a clear and concise manner. He spoke of how they'd worked tirelessly to gather evidence over several years, using specialized techniques like forensics analysis and wiretapping to identify key players and disrupt their operations. As the trial progressed, Ryan's testimony continued to highlight the defendant's criminal behavior, from his involvement in drug trafficking rings to his role as a money launderer. He detailed how he used the proceeds of the crime to fund other illegal activities, such as weapons proliferation, political financing, and human rights violations. The prosecution emphasized that this was not just about punishing the defendant, but also highlighting the need for stricter laws and enforcement measures. As the jury began to weigh their decisions on whether the defendant should be found guilty or acquitted, Sarah watched in awe of Ryan's dedication and skill as an investigator. She could see how his passion for justice had led him down a path that was sometimes dangerous, yet always rewarding. Sarah knew that she'd have to support Ryan every step of the way if they were going to succeed in their mission against this powerful drug lord. But more than just her own commitment, it also came from her deep understanding of their shared values and beliefs as law enforcement officers who believed in protecting citizens' safety and promoting a safer society. As she listened to the judge's decision on whether the defendant was guilty or not, Sarah couldn't help but feel grateful for Ryan's unwavering commitment to justice. She knew that his work had not only saved lives, but also brought closure to families who had lost loved ones to drug trafficking, and he had shown them what it meant to be a true hero in their fight against organized crime. In the aftermath of the trial, Sarah, Marcus Banks, and Ryan hugged each other tightly, tears streaming down their faces. They knew that this was just one step towards bringing justice to those who needed it most, but they were also reminded of the importance of continuing their work together as a team, always striving for excellence in the fight against crime. As they stood outside the courtroom, looking out at the bustling city skyline and the bright lights of Washington, D.C., Sarah looked back on this day with pride. She knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would continue to do her best every single day to keep her community safe from harm and to promote a more just and equitable society for all. As they walked away together, their eyes filled with hope and determination, knowing that the fight against organized crime was far from over. But even as the curtain lifted on this case, Sarah knew that there would always be new challenges in the world of law enforcement. But she also felt confident in her team's abilities to rise above them, continue fighting for justice, and making a difference one step at a time. Her finish, in a dimly lit courtroom. Judge Marcus Banks stood in the center of the room, his face contorted with anger and disbelief as Officer Ryan Donovan strode into the entrance. The two men were side by side, each holding their breath, waiting for the verdict that would decide whether justice had been served or if they would continue to fight an uphill battle against a formidable criminal organization. As soon as Judge Banks raised his hand, the room erupted in chaos. Officers from various departments rushed towards them, their faces red with anger and urgency. Ryan Donovan's hands were shaking slightly as he handed over a stack of documents filled with evidence that could potentially bring down one of the most ruthless criminals in the city. "I've been working on this case for months," Judge Banks growled to his team. "And yet it seems like every time we get CLO. Sir, these guys step up their game." The courtroom erupted into murmurs as officers sifted through the documents, looking for any weaknesses or vulnerabilities that could be exploited by the organization. Ryan Donovan's eyes narrowed in determination as he studied the evidence before him. It was clear that they had found a significant lead on one of the main members of the organization, and it seemed likely that this individual would soon turn themselves over to justice. But there were still several other suspects at large who could potentially be involved in the crimes, and Ryan knew that the team needed to work together to ensure their success. "Let's start by reviewing the remaining leads," he said, pacing back and forth between the two officers. "We need more information on this one individual specifically." As they analyzed the details of the lead's identity, Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Curry stepped forward with a fresh perspective. He had recently discovered a trail that led directly to the organization's headquarters in a nearby warehouse. "We think we've got something here," he said, his voice filled with excitement and anticipation. "Based on this information, It seems like these guys are using this individual as their front man. The team nodded in agreement as they reviewed the evidence together, taking note of the key details that had been uncovered so far. "We know where to find him now," Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury said, his voice carrying a hint of urgency. "We'll need to set up an operation and follow his every move." As they made their way to the warehouse, Officer Ryan Donovan couldn't shake off the feeling of unease he felt about this new lead. He knew that it was only a matter of time before one of the remaining suspects turned themselves in. But he also knew that the team needed all the information they could get if they were going to succeed. "Let's stay alert," Ryan Donovan said as they arrived at the warehouse. "We don't want anyone else to take this opportunity and start their own investigation." The officers made their way inside, their guns drawn and ready for action. They quickly sprang into position around a large conference room, their eyes scanning every corner of the space in search of any signs of activity. As they waited, Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury stood at one side of the room, his face a mask of determination and anticipation. He had been following this lead closely ever since he first discovered it, and now that they were close to catching the group, he knew that victory was within reach. "You've got him," Officer Ryan Donovan called out from behind him as he emerged into the conference room. The other officers rushed over, their guns raised in anticipation of a confrontation with one of the suspects. Suddenly, Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury stepped forward and placed his hand on one suspect's shoulder. "I'm sorry for any inconvenience this has caused," he said softly, "but I have information that could be very valuable to our investigation." The other suspects looked at each other nervously before turning their attention back to Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury. "You know, we're just trying to keep things under control here," one of them snarled as they stood up and walked out of the conference room. "We don't want any unnecessary drama or disruptions." "I understand that," Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury said, his voice steady and calm. "But I believe this information is important for our investigation, and we need to take it into consideration." He continued to speak softly, his words carrying a sense of authority and conviction. The other suspects hesitated before reluctantly turning around and walking back into the conference room. They looked at each other in confusion as they listened to Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury's explanation, their faces betraying mixed emotions of fear, distrust, and uncertainty. As he finished speaking, Officer Ryan Donovan nodded thoughtfully. "Let's gather everything we can about this information," he said, his voice firm, "and then make a decision on whether or not to proceed with the investigation." The other officers grumbled in agreement as they gathered their gear and prepared for action once again. They knew that victory was still out of reach, but they also had no choice but to continue fighting against one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the city. For Sarah, a detective with the district attorney's office, her heart raced as she watched Ryan Donovan lead the team into the warehouse where their target would be hiding. She knew that this was only the beginning, and that they were up against some powerful opponents who had been at it for years. As they made their way inside, Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury stood in front of them, his eyes scanning every corner with a fierce determination. "We've got him," he announced from behind him as he stepped forward into the conference room. The other officers rushed over to investigate, their guns drawn and ready for action once again. Detective Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling of unease she had about this new lead. She knew that it was only a matter of time before one of the remaining suspects turned themselves in. But she also knew that the team needed all the information they could get if they were going to succeed. "I'm sorry for any inconvenience," Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury said as he placed his hand on one suspect's shoulder. "But I have information that could be very valuable to our investigation." The other suspects looked at each other nervously before turning their attention back to Detective Sarah. "You know, we're just trying to keep things under control here," one of them snarled as they stood up and walked out of the conference room. They didn't want any unnecessary drama or disruptions. "I understand that," Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury said, his voice steady and calm. "But I believe this information is important for our investigation, and we need to take it into consideration." He continued to speak softly, his words carrying a sense of authority and conviction. The other suspects hesitated before reluctantly turning around and walking back into the conference room. They looked at each other in confusion as they listened to Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury's explanation, their faces betraying mixed emotions of fear, distrust, and uncertainty. As he finished speaking, Officer Ryan Donovan nodded thoughtfully. "Let's gather everything we can about this information," he said, his voice firm, "and then make a decision on whether or not to proceed with the investigation." Sarah turned to Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury, her eyes locked in determination as she listened intently. She knew that they were up against some powerful opponents who had been at it for years, and that their only chance of success was if they could find all the pieces of the puzzle and piece them together. "Let's start by reviewing the remaining leads," Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury said, his voice carrying a hint of urgency. "We need more information on this one individual specifically." As they analyzed the details of the lead's identity, Sarah watched as Ryan Donovan struggled to keep his composure in front of their team. They had been working tirelessly for months, gathering evidence and interviewing witnesses, but every time they thought that they were getting closer, new obstacles appeared. "Let me make it clear," Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury said suddenly, his voice rising in intensity. "This individual is not just any random suspect. This person has a history of involvement with this organization, and we believe he will be the key to bringing them down." Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she realized that their target was one of the most powerful members of the criminal underworld, someone who had been involved in numerous high-profile cases over the years. "I understand," Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury said, his voice steady again. "But we need all the evidence and intelligence we can get before making any decisions." He continued to speak softly, his words carrying a sense of determination and conviction as he outlined their plan for how they would gather the information needed to take down this individual. The other officers nodded in agreement as they listened intently, their faces filled with excitement and anticipation. They knew that victory was still out of reach, but they also had no choice but to continue fighting against one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the city. For Detective Sarah, a detective with the district attorney's office, her heart raced as she watched Ryan Donovan lead the team into the warehouse where their target would be hiding. She knew that this was only the beginning, and that they were up against some powerful opponents who had been at it for years. As they made their way in, Detective Malik Dubois Keiko Khoury stood in front of them, his eyes scanning every corner with a fierce determination. "We've got him," he announced from behind him as he stepped forward into the conference global outline. In a packed courtroom, Judge Marcus Banks is slapped across the face by Officer Ryan Donovan, his eyes flashing with shock and anger. The other officers in attendance watch as the judge delivers their verdict on the defendant's charge of conspiracy to commit murder. Asterisk as Detective Sarah watched Ryan Donovan lead the team into the warehouse where their target would be hiding, her heart raced with anticipation. She had been working tirelessly for weeks, gathering evidence and building a case against the notorious criminal organization known as the Serpent. The team was led by seasoned Detective Jack Malik Dubois, who had spent his career infiltrating the group's operations. As they approached the warehouse, Detective Sarah could feel their breaths coming in short gasps. The place was massive, with rows of dimly lit cells and a maze of security cameras that seemed to stretch out as far as she could see. She knew that this was where their target would be hidden, but also realized how difficult it was to navigate the complex system. As they entered the warehouse, Detective Sarah scanned the room for any signs of trouble. The air was thick with an acrid smell of blood and urine, and a faint scent of gunpowder hung in the air. She could feel her heart racing as she made her way towards their target, who sat on top of one of the cells. "Ryan," Detective Sarah called out to him from behind his desk. "Do you recognize this man?" The defendant's face twisted with surprise and anger, his eyes narrowing at her as he looked up. It was a tall, muscular individual with a scar above his left eye and piercing blue eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. "I don't know who you're talking about," the serpent replied, his voice deep and gravelly. "But I'm here because of what your organization has done to innocent people." Detective Sarah knew that this was no small matter. Her team had been working tirelessly for weeks on their case against the group, uncovering evidence that connected them to a string of violent crimes across multiple cities. "Your actions are reprehensible," she continued, her voice filled with determination and conviction as she outlined their plan for how they would gather the information needed to take down this individual. "You have targeted innocent people who were just trying to live their lives in peace." The serpent snorted at her words, a sneer that showed his disdain for anyone who dared challenge his authority. He leaned back into his chair, arms crossed over his chest as he studied the detective's expression. "What is your plan?" the serpent asked, his voice thick with malice. Detective Sarah hesitated before answering, unsure of how to proceed. She had been working closely with the DA's office for months, gathering evidence and building a case against her target. "We will gather intelligence on your operations through surveillance, tracking down potential witnesses and interviewing informants," she said, taking a deep breath as she began outlining their plan. "We know that you have a network of supporters who are scattered across the city, but we also believe that there may be individuals within your organization who can provide us with crucial information." The serpent's expression remained unchanged, his eyes fixed on Detective Sarah without making any visible response. She could feel her heart pounding in chest as she continued to speak. "We will investigate every lead we get and cross-reference it against the evidence we have gathered," she said, her voice rising in anger. "We won't rest until you are brought to justice for your crimes." The serpent's eyes flickered with amusement at Detective Sarah's bold statement. He knew that she was playing a dangerous game of cat and mouse, but he also couldn't help the thrill of the challenge. "I will see what I can do," the serpent replied, his voice softening slightly as he took another deep breath before continuing. "But remember, you are coming at me alone." Detective Sarah's heart sank at that moment, realizing that they were up against an opponent with a powerful network and extensive resources.